August 6th, 2023. This is David Bedein, Behind the Scene with David Bedein. I'll begin this broadcast with a moment in memory of my father, may he rest in peace, Philip Bedein, who fought in World War II, was sent back from New Guinea with jungle rot, and he felt pretty bad about that, and he wanted to stay with his unit until the end of the war. So in the month of July 1945, he felt better enough to be ready to go back to the army. And while he was going through maneuvers, training to go back into the army, the statement that was made over and over was Golden Gate in 48, because it was thought that it would take another 3 years to take over all the Japanese islands. Well, today is the day, of course, when we remember the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, which curtailed any further activity from the Japanese and forced the Japanese also with Nagasaki on August 9th into a surrender. So there are those who say that 1 million American lives were saved by that, including my father's perhaps, but that's the other side of the perspective one gets in hindsight of a portion of history where your own family took part. Today, I'd like to relate to what's happening with Saudi Arabia. There's rumors of a Saudi peace initiative. Saudi Arabia is the largest Arab nation that is at war with Israel. I emphasize at war with Israel. The nations that made war against Israel in 1948 were spearheaded by the Arab League. Saudi Arabia is the kingpin of the Arab League. Saudi Arabia made it very clear to Franklin Roosevelt in 1945 that Zionism would not be tolerated, and they would go to a full-scale war for the rest of their lives to fight Zionism. And as it would happen, that was correct. The Saudis this day, as the kingpin of the Arab League, have never made a peace with Israel, have never compromised, whereas Jordan and Egypt have signed separate peace treaties. Syria and Lebanon have signed armistice agreements with Israel, but not so from the Saudis. Now, in 2002, there was a news report in the New York Times in February 2002 that there was a Saudi peace initiative. And during February and March 2002, there was a major headlines around the world about the Saudi peace initiative. Tom Friedman of the New York Times, he scooped it. He went to Saudi Arabia, got a hold of the peace initiative, and publicized it. Now, what he didn't count on was that some people would look at the Arabic version of the peace initiative, as Itamar Rabinovitz did. He's Professor Itamar Rabinovitz, who later became president of Tel Aviv University, a veteran of Israeli intelligence, who knew Arabic. On April 7th, 2002, Itamar Rabinovitz wrote a piece in the Haaretz newspaper, the Israeli Haaretz newspaper, in which he blew this thing to kingdom come, said this didn't exist, because he'd seen the Arabic version, which said that the Saudi agreement to a peace deal meant one thing, that Israel would have to give up on the right of return. In other words, accept all the Arab refugees back to where they came from in 48, which would essentially mean the end of Israel. Friedman didn't know Arabic. The people in the New York Times bureau pointed out that Friedman did not know Arabic, did not read Arabic, did not refer to it. And basically, Itamar Rabinovitz disgraced Tom Friedman's credibility. In a normal situation, that would have put the guy out to lunch in a permanent way. However, Tom Friedman has a way of bouncing back 21 years later, talking about the Saudi peace initiative again. Now, the Saudi Arabia peace initiative is dependent on several things. One, a PLO state, the Palestine Liberation Organization and state, which again is cruxed on the right of return, allowing the Arabs to come back to where they came from in 48. Two, tolerating a situation where Saudi Arabia has a new working relationship with Iran. Also allowing Saudi Arabia to have a new working relationship with Hamas, a terror organization which is even more committed to Israel's destruction than the PLO. The maintaining the status quo with Saudi Arabia's sponsorship of Palestinian Authority education, which is, you can look at our website, israelbehindthenews.com, and learn about their education. We've been through 1,000 of their school books. Very, very clear message. It's a monolithic message of continued war, which is their education system is based on. And finally, the Saudi support for the right of return through UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which maintains 6.4 million Arabs in refugee camps who have been dwelling in those refugee camps. They're supposed to be temporary under the premise and promise of the right of return. So all these are the premisi of a peace deal with Saudi Arabia. Now they use the word normalization. It doesn't seem to me that the word normal would apply to a situation like we have here with all these conditions that Israel that Saudi puts out, and the final, perhaps the unkindest cut of all is the fact that Saudi Arabia is demanding that it be allowed to develop a nuclear capacity. Nuclear capacity. They say it's nuclear weapons for peace, but then again, this is nuclear capacity for peace. But nuclear capacity for peace can very quickly turn into a capacity for making nuclear weapons. So this doesn't seem to be a logical way for normalcy. Why is this though? Why does this have legs? Why is it continuing? Well, there's a whole culture in Israel of people who think that they can substitute profit-making enterprises in exchange for anything else. And Saudis have an interest office in Israel. They operate to some extent. They operate under the radar. But then again, Israel's prime investigative journalist on Israel television, Ayala Hassan, published a few years ago, printed a major report that the Saudi Interest Office in Tel Aviv is involved in the business of buying up Jewish land in the Galilee, the Upper Galilee. So there you have a situation where this normalization involves economic boom between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but it does not really involve peace. And the word normalization, according to several lawyers I've spoken with who are involved with international relations, point out that the word normalization doesn't really have any standing in international law. It's not something that is respected. So that's something to pay attention to. I'd like to relate to one more issue today in today's communication. That's Israel's image problem. Now, Israel's image problem comes from a very strange reality, which is manipulated by the media experts of the Palestine Liberation Organization, now known as the Palestinian Authority. Let's take a look at what happened this past Friday night on August 4th, Friday night. A group of Arabs with stones and clubs and other kinds of modern weapons attacked the shepherds. One of the shepherds felt his life was in danger and shot back and killed one of the Arab assailants. Now, this was on Friday night, the Sabbath, when Israel's media is not working. So the Palestinian Arab media professionals put out a statement in the middle of Shabbat, in the middle of the Sabbath, saying that there had been a massive attack, not by Arabs on the shepherds, but the shepherds on the Arabs. And the Israel Defense Force has a public relations division, and they didn't have any idea what was going on, so they quoted the Arab sources as being credible. So as a result, the only thing you had in the media on Sunday morning after the Sabbath was the story of a Jewish shepherd who shot an Arab, and as if it was in cold blood, and the Israelis had nothing to say because they didn't know, they hadn't looked into what happened. So around the world on Sunday, which around the world is not a work day, the media was bouncing around on the internet and in the different news services that an Israeli settler shepherd had murdered an Arab, and the U.S. State Department chimed in with their own statement that accusing this Jew of murdering an Arab and demanding full justice. Now this creates the image of Israel as not only an aggressor but as a murderer, and this is very, very, very sad. Israel doesn't have in place a system, and certainly the Jewish communities in Judea Samaria do not have a place in anything in the system to respond to situations like this. And so Israel gets a black eye for lack of doing anything, and for the automatic assumption that the Jews who live in Judea Samaria, who are settlers, who are shepherds, that they are the aggressors. So that's an image problem which needs to be addressed. My suggestion is that there should be an emergency task force to help Israel with the media and to be able to cope with the very sophisticated way in which the Palestine Liberation Organization, now known as the Palestinian Authority, handles the media with rapid response and in a way that's very short, very long-term thought, with long-term thoughts. And today, which is a Sunday in Israel, I'm getting messages from around the Jewish world of worry and concern that the Jews have gotten crazy, starting to murder Arabs who are innocent. So this is Israel's image, and I would like to be part of a process to redress this issue with people who would like to work with me, who would like to know, who would like to respond in a serious way. Behind the scene with David Bedein. Thank you.
The new U.S. peace plan for the Middle East demands an end to incitement and violence.
And the president did something unique. He recognized basically the conditions on the ground, recognized reality, that in order for these two groups to live in peace, there's going to have to be some give and take here. And one of those pieces of the give is to understand you cannot continue down the road of indoctrination if there's going to be any peace in the region. That just makes sense. And so that's what the president wants to ensure happens to protect the people of Israel.
72 years after the Arab-Israeli War, 5 million descendants of Arab refugees from 1948 still dwell in the squalor of 59 refugee camps. The camps are run by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. The residents are indoctrinated with the notion that they have the right to return to villages that existed before 1948. This is a core principle of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization.
لازم نقاومهم ونرجع أراضينا.
نرجع على أراضينا المحتلة في 48 اللد وعكا ويافا والآخر.
حق العودة إنه نرجع بلادنا زي ما شردونا الاحتلال بقوة من أرضنا، ولازم إحنا نطلعهم زي ما طلعونا بقوة.
لن نبخل عن حق العودة ولن نرضى بأي وطن بديل وبأي عاصمة غير القدس الشريف. سنعود إلى ديارنا.
لكن نيجي بنقعدهم إنه أنت إيش بلدك إيش بلدك إيش بلدك. الأطفال اللي بتعرفوا على كذا بلد، مش أنا بس القدس، لا أنا وطني فلسطين في كذا مدينة. يعني في بصير انتماء أكثر للطفل. يعني بصير الأطفال هنا يعني إحنا ما بيخلي يعني حتى الآن صار الولد عند الطفل أو البنت إنه صارت كتير متشوقة ترجع لبلدها الأصلي.
أنا بشوف كل ما يمر يوم على النكبة وعلى التهجير كل ما اقترب موعد العودة إن شاء الله. العودة والتعويض ولا بديل ولا بديل ولا بديل.
ثقافة حق العودة أكيد نركز عليها كثيرا، وأكيد هذا هو جزء لا يتجزأ من ثقافة مناهجنا الدراسية. نعطيهم نوصل هاي المعلومات لطلابنا في مدارسنا عن طريق مواد التربية المدنية والتربية الوطنية.
السلام عليكم. بدي أسألكم من وين أنتم أصلكم؟ من أي بلد؟ وبعدين بنحكي عن النكبة شوي. تفضل. من أي بلد؟
من فلسطين. احنا من حيفا.
من حيفا.
من يافا. من قضا يافا بيت دجن.
بيت دجن.
يافا قضا يافا. راجع بلادي راجع بلادي على أرض الأقصى راجع بلادي أنا ولادي على أرض الأقصى راجع بلادي يا محلى القعدة يا محلى القعدة في حكورتنا يا محلى القعدة ما بنسى وعدة ما بنسى وعدة نرجع أرضنا وما بنسى وعدة.
Because of the antithetical culture of UNRWA, Arab refugees remain in the camps. UNRWA provides health, education, and health services. At the same time, it promotes an ideology that perpetuates war. encouraging residents to remain in their homes until they can conquer Israel and create a new country of Palestine. For decades, the United States was the lead donor to UNRWA, paying for about half its $1.2 billion budget. The U.S. stopped funding UNRWA last year after it determined that American tax dollars had been used to prolong the suffering of yet another generation of refugees. Within UNRWA schools, peace is never discussed. Instead, war is taught daily in prose and in songs.
لا مش حيصير بيننا احنا وإسرائيل لأنه شردونا وقتلونا.
إنه الاحتلال يعرف إنه إحنا إنه هاي الأرض إلنا ومش إلهم، إنه يعني هاي مش أرض بلا شعب، هاي أرض عليها شعب فلسطيني.
فيش سلام بيننا وبين إسرائيل لأنه بخربوا حقوق الفلسطينية إنهم يرجعوا لبلادهم. أكيد لا، لأنه إحنا لا بنعرفهم ولا هم بيعرفونا.
مش راح يكون سلام بيننا وبين إسرائيل لأنه إسرائيل هي عدوتنا يعني.
وأنا بحب أروح، أنا بحب أرجع على كفر قاسم غصبا عن اليهود وأنتصر على اليهود. هم مجموعة من الكفار والناصرة ولا بحبوا الله ولا بيعبدوا الله وبكرهونا.
نحن الثورة والغضب، نحن من الأجيال من هون من عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. نحن الثورة والغضب، نحن من الأجيال من هون من عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال.
ولما أم الاختيارة صبح نادت عالجارة وتلاجا الحجارة تنرشك عالدورية تنرشك عالدورية.
فلسطين الناس نبيحها بضلهم عنا فلسطين الحرة، هنرجع بلادنا لازم نهجم عليهم.
قول إن شاء الله سنة وراح نحررها، لازم نحررهم عشان نرجع أرضنا، لازم نقاومهم ونرجع أرضنا اللي أخذوها منا. هاي لما طلعونا منها بالقوة، إحنا لازم نطلعهم من بلادها بالقوة وغصب عنهم راح يطلعوا. مش راح تضل فلسطين إسرائيل في فلسطين، لأنه فلسطين مش للبيع، والقدس مش للبيع، راح تضلها إلنا. القدس عاصمة فلسطين الأبدية.
نحاربهم ونقاومهم يعني بأكتر إشي بنقدر نعمله.
في القرآن الكريم مكتوب إنه زوال إسرائيل راح يتم على يد الفلسطينيين.
At UNRWA schools, education is not limited to texts and is not confined to the classroom. Inside schoolyards, students pass by violent graffiti that glorifies killers. One of the Palestinian heroes is Dalal Mughrabi, whose image adorns alleyways near UNRWA schools and neighborhoods. In 1978, she led a terror gang that commandeered a bus and murdered 38 passengers, including 13 children. On the paths of UNRWA camps, children speak about Mughrabi with awe and reverence.
صور شهداء سووا عمليات، إنه سووا عمليات لأجل الوطن. يعني دلال المغربي سوت عملية تفجير وفجرت حالها عند الجيش.
يعني زي أختي وأمي بنت بلدي.
دلال المغربي هي شهيدة فلسطينية فجرت اليهود وهجرتهم.
دلال المغربي أول شهيدة فلسطينية، فجرت من الجيش الإسرائيلي، يعني سوت عملية استشهادية.
UNRWA schools portray Mughrabi as a role model. In its current curriculum, Mughrabi's photo appears in a study book for third graders. It is a key lesson in Our Beautiful Language, a new textbook issued in 2019. On page 63, pupils learn to chant the Land of the Nobles. The assignment calls for kids to liberate Palestine and to exterminate the current residents of Israel, the Jews. Here they chant the song in the classroom. Their lethal melodies do not resonate just in the classroom. Here, a teacher leads the same war song during a field trip as children prepare for the liberation of Palestine with toy guns.
وأزيل الغاصب من بلدي وأبيد فلول الغرباء يا بلد الأقصى والحرم يا مهد النخوة والكرم صبرا صبرا فالنصر لنا والفجر يطل من الظلم قسما سأضحي بدمائي لأروي أرض الكرماء لأروي أرض الكرماء
When we visited UNRWA schools, we found students eager to deny the existence of Israel or any Jewish connection to the land.
طب ايش اتعلمت عن اسرائيل؟
انهم كلاب باخذ ارضنا. فيش دولة اسمها اسرائيل. محتلة فلسطين. وفيش بعدين اشي اسمه اسرائيل.
هل ممكن الاسرائيليين يضلوا هون في فلسطين؟
لا، بنهجرهم من هون. تعلمنا انه احنا لازم ما نخليش ارضنا لحد بنعرفهم مش، ولازم ما نسكتش عن حق. فيش اشي اسمه اسرائيل لانه احنا اسمها دولة اسرائيل. احنا بس فلسطين إلنا. مستقبل القدس ان شاء الله راح تكون إلنا. اكيد على اكيد، وفيش لا اسرائيل ولا اشي اسمه اسرائيل.
Given America's new insistence that Palestinians eliminate incitement and violence, perhaps more UNRWA donor countries will ask why they allow millions to live as refugees in perpetuity.